Okay, so let's start with her motivation. So her name is Maitri, which means love. Yeah. Same name as Maitreya Buddha. So love is the wish for living beings to have happiness in its causes without any strings attached, to have that wish for them, but without any ifs, ands, and buts, such as, if you're nice to me, then I wish you to have happiness in its causes. If you agree with my ideas, if you give me presents, if you tell people how wonderful I am. So we can see so often in our relationships with people that we have a lot of conditions for wishing them to have happiness in its causes. And all those conditions that we want them to fulfill have to do with us and what they can do to contribute to our happiness and our well-being. So that kind of wish for somebody to have happiness in its causes winds up being quite polluted with attachment. So it's something to be really careful about. And there's a few methods that help us overcome that. And one is by not seeing the person as the form that they're in this particular lifetime, but seeing the person as something larger than the appearance of this life, something larger than the relationship we have with them in this life. And realize that what is appearing to us as a real person is basically a karmic bubble, something created by karma, motivated by afflictions, appearing to be a 100% wonderful person, but actually all that is there is a body and a mind that are conditioned by afflictions and karma. And a person, an I, that exists by being merely labeled, in dependence on that body and mind. But a person that lacks any real findable essence, a person that is simply an appearance, simply a convention, simply something created by karma and afflictions. If we could train our mind repeatedly to see other people like this, then we won't judge them so much, because we'll be able to see that there's no solid person there to start with, and whatever person is there is simply a living being exactly like us, wanting happiness and not pain. So the more we can train our minds to equalize sentient beings, then the more we're able to release the attachment and aversion to specific beings, which gives us space to cultivate actual love for them. So this is something that's quite beautiful when we can do it, and it takes repeated effort. But it's extremely worthwhile, not only in terms of how it affects us this life, but how it affects our Dharma practice, our ability to reach out and benefit others, how it affects the purity of our mind, the merit on our mind, the ability to gain realizations. So with this kind of intention, let's listen to the teachings this evening and have a strong determination in our life to develop this kind of love for other living beings and for ourselves as well. So there's several people here who have not been here before. We're in the middle of a text, actually towards the end of a text, the Gomchen Lamrim. His Holiness Dalai Lama gave the Lung and some teachings on this when he was giving the 18 Lamrim texts. And so it's not a long text, but it's very juicy. So we've been in the chapter on Serenity for quite some time, and I've kind of left the Gomchen Lamrim behind and gone off and talked about, in depth about various topics that the text here has only mentioned in a sentence or two. But I want to come back to the text so that you have the oral transmission, and that what we'll go through will be kind of like a review of what we've covered so far. Yeah. Before we do that, I wanted to just mention that I sent out to the residents this afternoon something that was put together by the Singaporeans who are doing the course. They do it Saturday morning, and so there were 2 Saturday mornings when we were doing our Vinaya program that they continued to meet. And so what they did is they went through the 10 non-virtues, and they pulled out a lot of quotations from the Pali Suttas about that, and then they especially went into speech and what constitutes, right speech and wrong speech. So I sent it around to you because I thought it was very, very helpful, especially it had many quotations in it. And also as a way of saying here is a group of people who I didn't give any instructions to what to do during the teachings, the days when there was no class, but who from their own enthusiasm for the course and their wish to learn the Dharma gave themselves an assignment and fulfilled it. So I think that's quite praiseworthy, and I, wanted to send around to all of you the results of what they did. Okay, now coming back to Gomchen Lamrim. Okay, so I think we're in the section How to Train in the Last 2 Perfections in particular. I don't think I covered that. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire outline because it's quite detailed, and if I read it all to you, you'd probably get very confused. So it's in the text, which you have, so you can look at the outline itself. I'm just going to go to the main topics. So in talking about how to train in the last 2 perfections in particular, they're talking about how to train in meditative stability and in wisdom. Okay? So they're, for meditative stability, they're emphasizing serenity, and for wisdom, they're emphasizing insight. Okay, so shamatha and Vipassana. Okay, so it first talks about the benefits of meditating on serenity and insight. And part of this section, in this particular here, I don't know, I think some things are not translated so well, or at least I can't understand them very well. So I will tell you what I understand, and I will tell you what I don't understand. Okay? So under the benefits of meditating on serenity and insight, it says one-pointed focus on a virtuous object, and even the premises of subtle wisdom analyzing discriminately are classified respectively as serenity and insight. Okay, so serenity is particularly one-pointed focus on a virtuous object. So it's not just on any old object. Okay, and so for people, who like to stare at candles, there's a little bit of a problem because a candle isn't really a virtuous object. And also, serenity is attained with your mental consciousness, not with your visual consciousness. Okay. Then it says the imprints, whatever they may be, that generate more and more incorrect perceptions in the mind is known as dysfunctional tendencies. So this is one thing the usual meaning of dysfunctional tendencies is not this. So I don't have the Tibetan to be able to check what the term they used is. But basically, the imprints that generate more and more incorrect perceptions, those are the cognitive obscurations. Okay? So the latencies of the afflictions, especially the latencies of ignorance. The states of mind that activate these imprints, wrong clinging to objects, is known as bondage to signs. So lots of times we hear talk about signs. The word sign in Tibetan can mean so many different things. Like when we're doing the debate class, their sign means the reason in a syllogism. Here, sign means sign of inherent existence. Okay, so bondage to grasping at inherent existence. And so these are eliminated by meditating on serenity and insight. Okay, then explaining how all states of concentration are included in the two. Since all the diverse good qualities of concentration and wisdom are all qualities of serenity and insight, by practicing both serenity and insight, which encompass all meditative states, you achieve the root of the three vehicles, good qualities taught by the conqueror. Okay, so these practices, serenity, shamatha, and insight, vipassana, they occur in all Buddhist traditions. Yeah, and they're the root of the practice of the three vehicles. So whether you're practicing as a Shravaka, a Pratyeka Buddha, or on the Bodhisattva vehicle, then serenity and insight are very important in all of that. There's no way to skip over those at all. Okay. So here we can see, and you've heard me mention this before, that often in America we hear talk about Vipassana as if it's a specific Buddhist tradition. Yeah, and there's Vipassana Dharma centers and so on. And so actually, Vipassana is a meditation technique. It means the insight meditation that you're using to try and gain understanding of the nature of reality. Yeah? But it's because the people who learned this in the Theravada tradition extracted it from Buddhism and basically taught it as a meditation technique. So that's how that particular type, a branch of, I don't know if you call it a branch of Buddhism or Buddhist school, whatever it is, that's how come it's called Vipassana, which is misleading because Vipassana meditation is found in all the Buddhist traditions. Okay, and so all states of concentration are included within serenity and insight. Yeah. So that's important to remember, and that means that we have to develop both of those. Okay, then the nature of serenity and insight. So like I said, I'm using this as a review of what we've covered before. So once distraction towards the exterior is appeased, the non-analytical state of mind that observes its object one-pointedly and gives rise to the bliss of pliancy is meditative serenity. Okay, so that's kind of like a definition, or at least a description here. Okay, so to have serenity, you have to eliminate the distraction towards exterior objects, external objects. And that is not easy because we are beings in the desire realm. So much of our mind is involved with desire towards external objects, objects of the senses. So, we're always looking for beautiful things, wanting to hear beautiful things, smell nice things, taste good things, touch good things, think about nice external objects. So our mind is usually totally distracted towards the external world. Yeah. And this is what we study in our school system. Yeah. What is science? It's studying the external world. What is sociology? Studying how groups of people external to us get along. So much of what we learn in school is just the external world. And we remain in many ways largely ignorant of our own internal world. And sometimes when we do become aware of our internal world, then we just spin around it. My emotions, my feelings, my, like that. So this is how we get pretty confused. So it's saying, that serenity, first, the distraction towards the external things has to be appeased or subdued. And then it's a non-analytical state of mind. So the insight is an analytical state of mind, but serenity is not analytical. Why? Because serenity is focused one-pointedly on its object, and when you're doing analysis, you're looking at the object from various perspectives, so you're not just staying on one object, you're looking around and investigating. Okay? So it's a non-analytical state of mind that observes its object one-pointedly, so it doesn't, go around the universe looking at all sorts of other things. And it gives rise to the bliss of pliancy. Okay? So before we talked about the 9 stages of sustained attention, and then after that, comes some various other things, and one of them is the bliss of pliancy. So it's only when we have that then we actually attain serenity. Okay? When analytical meditation that rides the mount of serenity by its own power gives rise to pliancy, insight is attained. Okay, so insight is an analytical meditation, okay, that rides the mount of serenity by its own power and gives rise to pliancy. What it means is that this analytical mind, is able to give rise to the bliss of pliancy. Yeah. Before, with serenity, it's only a non-analytical mind that can get you, the bliss of pliancy. And analysis disturbs that because analysis is changing objects. But with insight, that analysis ceases to disturb the one-pointedness and instead reinforces it and gives rise to pliancy. Okay? And so that insight, their pliancy no longer disturbs the one-pointedness, and one-pointedness no longer prevents you from analyzing. So it's a very, very powerful mind, and what we want to do is use that to focus on emptiness. Okay. Then how the order of serenity and then insight is certain. So some people assert that while serenity's clarity aspect lacks intensity, insights does have it. So this is incorrect, for the difference lies in the presence or absence of laxity, and serenity too must be free of laxity. So that sentence is not very well worded. It's quite difficult. So I think what it means is, that to have serenity, you have to be free of laxity. So it's not just a thing of getting rid of lethargy, which is much grosser, but this subtle kind of laxity that obscures the mind and makes the clarity not so intense. That laxity has to be absent in order to have serenity. Okay. And then it says, all meditative states free of laxity are guaranteed to have the aspect of mental clarity. So laxity is what obscures the clarity of the mind. It makes it, your mind may have some clarity, but the intensity of the clarity is missing. And so they say that some people get really involved in that meditative state. They can stay in it for a really long time. And they can even think that they've actualized serenity or even one of the dhyanas, but they haven't. So they say that that subtle kind of laxity is something to be very careful of in our meditation. But you have to be fairly advanced to even get to the point where subtle laxity is a problem for you. Because most of us, our problem is, distraction, and we need to cultivate stability, which holds the mind on the object. Okay? So whether it is serenity or insight that meditates on emptiness, it must realize, in other words, have the aspect of emptiness. However, non-discursive meditative states do not necessarily realize emptiness. And the reason he says that is because some people think, non-discursive means you're not conceptualizing. There's not discursive, there's not chatter, So some people think that you just get rid of all your mental chatter and you have blank mind, and that must be the realization of emptiness. Just empty your mind of all thoughts. And so that's what he's saying here, that just being a non-discursive state without having lots of mental chatter doesn't necessarily mean that you've realized emptiness. You could just be spaced out. Okay. So you should know that both states of concentration that are not directed towards emptiness and states of concentration realizing emptiness issue from blissful, clear non-discursiveness. So non-discursiveness, to have serenity on either something that is on either emptiness or some other topic, you have to be free of discursive thought. Okay? So we have to shed all that mental chatter, which means that we have to close down our opinion factory. Because if we look, what is, a lot of our mental chatter about? It's our opinion factory, isn't it? I like this, I don't like that. Why is this person doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Things should be this way, they shouldn't be that way. So all of our opinions over things that really are not very important in the big picture of the world, and yet our mind latches onto them. So that's discursive thought. Yeah? So we have to really subdue the opinion factory, which is quite difficult, because we're quite attached to our opinion factory. Yeah, our opinions make us who we are, our unique personality. And if we give up having opinions, we're so afraid that we're just going to be like a bump on the log and sit there and, and somebody asks us a question and we'll just sit there. I don't know. I don't have any opinions. Like you're some spaced out drug state, So, so we're very afraid of becoming like that. Our opinions, that makes it me, and then I have something to fight for, and something to be, and something to make me a unique individual. Yeah, so you see how that all fits in with the grasping at a self. To kind of lay off the workers in the opinion factory, they don't want to go easily. They're going to make a fuss. Okay, having achieved serenity, the wisdom analyzing reality is free of the fault of instability. Okay, so instability is, one of the problems we have. So instability means we can't stay on the object. Lack of clarity is the other problem, which means even we can stay on the object isn't very clear. Okay, so those are two of the qualities that we want to develop in serenity, is stability and clarity. Furthermore, analytical meditations of all topics, requiring it to avoid the fault of excessive instability with regard to those objects, rendering potent whatever virtue you perform. There's got to be an easier way to say that, which is, I think, that, if we do both analytic meditation can help us avoid excessive instability, because when we do analytic meditation, for example, on the Lamrim, then that really helps to counteract our opinion factory, because we learn to differentiate, what is something useful to think about, and what are just, our opinions about this and that, and all sorts of inconsequential things. Okay. So instability, if we can't stay on the object, then it weakens all the meditation we do. Yeah? Because to really have, when we're meditating, even you're doing analytic meditation, to have it really have an effect on you, there has to be some stability in the mind. Because if you start, whatever, even let's say you're meditating on precious human life, but you start that, and then, then it's like, oh, and I noticed the color of the meditation hall. We still haven't figured out, is it peach or is it pink? Yeah, and we had a huge debate about that many years ago, and I think it's peach. No, and you think it's pink? You think it's peach, and I think it's pink, So, you see what I mean? But, these things that our ego latches onto, it's like she doesn't know the right color of the walls in the meditation hall.
I don't remember the name of the paint.
So, this mind that just goes all over the place, that can't stay on, if we're meditating on precious human life, then, how are we going to get any deep kind of understanding of it? Okay. So now there's a section of how to train in each. So in in serenity and in insight. So to the followers of the present system, according to which serenity and insight must be produced in succession, so first serenity, then insight, if you ask, before that, what is wrong with a person who has an initial understanding of selflessness, concurrently achieving serenity and insight in relation to emptiness? Okay, so it sounds like here's somebody who has some general understanding of selflessness, and they think that if they just continue with that, they'll have serenity and insight concurrently, simultaneously, and get it all. And the answer is, we do not say attaining a simple experience and understanding of reality requires first achieving serenity. So we can have an initial general experience of emptiness without first achieving serenity. Okay. However, for a person who has not attained a realization of emptiness arising from meditation, okay, which mean that the realization of emptiness arising from meditation is a union of serenity and emptiness, a serenity and insight on the object of meditation, of emptiness, and having that is the demarcation line for entering the path of preparation, because that's when the wisdom arising from meditation begins. Okay, so if you don't, for a person who has not attained a realization of emptiness arising from meditation, so they haven't unified serenity and insight, attaining insight arising from meditation that takes emptiness as its object without prior analytical meditation is possible in highest Yoga Tantra. Nevertheless, in the three lower classes of Tantra, and in the present context, although you may seek an understanding of selflessness and analyze it repeatedly before achieving serenity, that alone will be insufficient to make serenity possible. Okay, so in other words, just having an understanding of selflessness, is and you haven't attained serenity before, that is not what will get you to a realization of serenity. Okay, that alone will be insufficient to make serenity possible. However, in the highest Yoga Tantra, there's a way of doing analytic meditation that can quickly bring a union of serenity and insight. Okay, so that's why it has that phrase, like if you haven't done that in highest Yoga Tantra, then in the three lower tantras and in the present Sutrayana context, just analyzing wisdom is not going to get you to serenity or the union of serenity and insight. I think that's what it means. It's difficult to understand, at least for me. I would like to have a retranslation of this. If you practice non-discursive, stabilizing meditation, although you will achieve serenity, since there is no training in insight, serenity will come first and insight after, and the order will not differ. Okay? So if you practice non-discursive, stabilizing meditation, okay, you'll achieve serenity, but since you're not training in insight meditation, then you won't attain serenity and insight at the same time. First, there will be serenity. Then, when you switch to insight-style meditation, then you can attain insight. And insight actually is a union of serenity and insight. This order concerns an initial attainment. Subsequently, you may meditate on insight first. That's to insight included in the preparation stage of the first dhyana. Some achieve the serenity that is included in the actual dhyana. That last sentence.
But you missed some sentences before that.
I did? Oh, yes, I did. Since there was no training yet. As for the way to achieve insight, okay, it is by discriminating wisdom's analysis that pliancy occurs. Okay? So you have to do discriminating or analytical meditation to gain insight. You don't have to do that to gain serenity. Okay? But like I said before, the key here is you've attained serenity that has pliancy and the bliss of pliancy that you've gotten through non-discursive meditation, just focusing one pointed on an object, and then to get insight, that analytical meditation or discriminating wisdom here, is analyzing, and it's by the power of analysis that the pliancy and the bliss of pliancy arises. Okay? So whereas before, that analysis would have disturbed the stability, now analysis furthers the stability. Okay? So, and then what the other sentence that I read, whether it is in relation to the way things are or to the diversity, in other words, the ultimate and conventional truths, respectively, the order is certain. First serenity, then insight. If it were otherwise, it would contradict the sutras and numerous scholars and meditators' treatises. Now, it's interesting, in the, I read one Pali Sutra that was talking about this, and where the Buddha described 4 ways that it could be. One is first serenity, then insight. Another way was first insight and then serenity. The third way was both of them at the same time. And the fourth was by some way that it's not very clear what he meant, but it seems to refer to some monk who had some ripening of karma and got it in a flash, something like that. Okay? And so I know, in the Theravada countries, there's a lot of discussion which one you do first, which one you attain first, how they come together. So there can be different views on this. Okay? But then it says this order concerns an initial attainment. So when you initially attain insight. Subsequently, so after you've attained serenity, after you've attained insight, then when you sit down to meditate, if you want to, you can meditate on insight first and then combine it with serenity. Okay, is that clear? Okay, now how to train in each. So it's going to talk about serenity first. So a lot of this that comes now is stuff that we covered in depth before. Okay. So the first one is, finding a good place to meditate. So residing in a harmonious place with 5 good qualities. So this is important to do if you want to attain realizations. If you're living next to the highway and you have a busy job and life is happening, then to think in that kind of situation, you're going to gain serenity. Good luck. Yeah. But as much as we can put ourselves in a situation that has any of these qualities, then that helps us, because we are so influenced by the external situation. Okay, so some of these are qualities, inside qualities. So having few desires. So we've talked about that. If you have a lot of desires, you're not going to be able to sit and concentrate. You're going to want to go fulfill your desires. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you can get real German chocolate, yeah, you're back in Germany and you can get real German chocolate.
Yes, keeps them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cultivating contentment. Yeah, so learning how to be content with what we have instead of a mind that wants more, that wants better. So you can see, just those two, having few desires and contentment. These qualities are like essential really for progressing on the path, whatever we do. And Vinaya helps us cultivate these two. Yeah, because Vinaya is particularly helping us create a good environment for ourselves by, not letting us put ourselves in situations where our afflictions are going to get provoked. Okay, few activities, so we're not busy doing this, that, and the other thing. Pure ethical discipline, yeah, because if we don't have that, we're going to have a lot of guilt and remorse and won't be able to concentrate. And then rejecting thoughts of desire. Okay, so having some control over our mind. And it should be, usually in this list, it's, living in a place where you can get your four requisites easily. Yeah. If you can stay in a place where there's a Sangha community or where there's other meditators or where previous meditators have lived, then that's very good. Making sure you have a support system, because when you're meditating, all sorts of stuff comes up. And if you're an inexperienced meditator, you're not going to know how to handle it. So we need to be near people with more experience than us who can help us when stuff comes up. Yeah, because we think, oh, sit down, close my eyes. Yeah, I'll get it real quick. But all sorts of stuff comes up, Lots of psychological issues come up. Things, one of my friends was telling me jingles from commercials that she heard as a child, because you're purifying your mind when you're trying to gain serenity, and whenever you purify, the dirt comes out. So you have to know how to work with all this, otherwise you just go, ah. Okay. So the preparatory stage for meditating is on serenity, is renunciation and bodhicitta. In other words, having a mind that where we know where serenity fits in the path. Yeah. And we know why we want to generate serenity. So it's not just because, we want to have far out experiences that come from having a single pointed mind. Yeah. That's not the motivation why we're meditating on serenity. It's because we've really looked good and hard at what samsara is and understood the first two of the four truths and want to get out of samsara. Yeah, want to attain liberation, want to actualize the last two truths. And we have some feeling for bodhicitta, wanting to be able to lead other beings to awakening and therefore needing to attain it ourselves first. And so, if we have that proper motivation when we sit down to do serenity meditation, then if we gain serenity, it will really help us in our practice. But if we don't have the proper motivation, we could gain serenity or even go through, up into the dhyanas, but get stuck in the bliss of those stages, get born in those stages after death, and never really make any progress on the actual path to liberation. Okay, so yeah, we always think we hear preparatory, and it's like, preparatory, that's easy, that's simple, we can skip over it. Actually, preparatory things are really important. I mean, even you're going to make something in the kitchen, you have to prepare your ingredients, right, before you start mixing them together and cooking. Otherwise, not going to turn out so good. Okay, then, so the physical posture, we've gone through that before, Vajra position, the hands, the right on the left, the thumbs touching. This is in your lap against your body. Lowered eyes, breathing through your nose, your tongue touching the upper palate. Okay, so we've been through that. Okay. Then the heading says, what to do before focusing the mind on the object of meditation. What this means is, first, contemplate the benefits of developing serenity. Because whenever we see the benefits of something, then we want to attain it. Okay? So, benefits of serenity. Possessing joy and bliss, you are physically satisfied and have the visible result that is happiness. Sounds good. Yeah? Your body is comfortable. Your body is satisfied. Your mind is happy. Is peaceful. Since pliancy has been achieved, your mind can easily be directed to virtue. Yeah, not like now where getting our mind towards virtue is sometimes like pulling teeth. Okay, as uncontrolled distraction towards incorrect objects is appeased, misbehavior does not occur, so we don't create as much negative karma due to an uncontrolled mind. Your virtue is potent, and you will soon attain the super knowledges and the supernormal powers. So supernormal powers are one of the super knowledges. And then we have clairaudience, clairvoyance, reading others' minds, seeing past lives. Okay, realizing insight into the profound, you overcome rebirth in samsara. That's a good result, okay? To sum up, whatever you meditate on, see the virtues of concentration, and inspired by them, faith will arise. From faith arises aspiration, and from it joyous effort. From that arises pliancy. So, do you remember this sequence? What is this sequence about? From faith to aspiration, joyous effort to pliancy. Yeah, those are the four antidotes to the obstacle of laziness. Okay, and laziness is what's preventing you from getting to the cushion. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I can tell that you didn't read any of this beforehand, because the next sentence actually tells you the answer to the question. From that arises pliancy, which puts a complete stop to laziness that weakens concentration. Okay, so now what to do while focusing on the objects. So now we're going to talk about the actual objects. So again, all this is review. So, it lists different kind of objects. So one is universal or extensive objects. So analytical images, non-analytical images, the limit of phenomena, I think the limit of diversity, something like that. So that's what's meant by universal or extensive objects. And then the objects purifying behavior. So, if we have problems with anger or attachment, conceit, jealousy, confusion, so the specific meditations you do to overcome those. The skillful objects, and then those purifying afflictions. Okay, I can look that up quickly, but let's keep going, and you can look that up on your own, okay? We covered it before. None of us can remember. None of us? Okay. Oh, that's right. Those are the skillful objects. Yeah, the 18 constituents, 12 sources, 5 aggregates, 12 links. Yeah, those are the skillful ones. Okay. Okay, and then showing which objects are for what person. So in particular, the object for those with strong attachment, what are you going to meditate on? The ugliness of the body. Okay. For those with strong discursiveness, the breath. Okay. For those with strong anger, love. Okay. Those with strong jealousy, rejoicing. Okay. Furthermore, examine the way attachment and so forth arise with great, average, or minor intensity in relation to the objects of attachment and so forth, so as to discern the remedies that reject attachment and the rest. So, look not only at, what affliction it is, but is the affliction at that moment very strong? Is it middle? Is it weak? Yeah. And then also to look at it overall, is the, that particular affliction in our life a strong one, a middle one, or a weak one? Because like I was saying the other day, we should really work hardest at the beginning on the strong afflictions, because they're the ones that really create havoc. Okay, so study the afflictions. How do they arise? How do they abide? How do they cease? Yeah. Where were they before they arose? Where were they? Where are they afterwards? Okay, then identifying objects in the present context. Okay, so here it's, I'll just read and you'll see. When discursiveness is dominant, breathing is a good object. Okay, that quiets the mind down. As taking the body of the Tathagata and so forth as an object serves many purposes, practice that. So here he's really emphasizing using the body of the Buddha as our object, the visualized body of the Buddha as the object. And it serves many purposes, because it generates faith. It makes us contemplate the Buddha's qualities. It strengthens our refuge in the 3 jewels. Okay, so there's many good qualities. And especially if you're going to enter Tantra, which involves visualization, having more visualization practice here is very helpful. Observing repeatedly an excellent likeness of the guide's body, retain its characteristics. So look at statues, paintings, or whatever of the Buddha, and remember what he looks like. This serves to make a mental image of the Buddha appear. So even though you're looking with your eyes first at a physical object, that's only so you can know what the object looks like. The real meditation starts with your mental consciousness, where you visualize in your mind the Buddha. And you visualize an actual Buddha, not a statue or a painting. Okay, so visualize it in your mind as the actual Buddha. To facilitate it appearing to you, start by meditating on the body's general features. So you go around and you note the general features of the Buddha's body. When these are stable, meditate on the details. Okay? So what we want to do is get a good general overall picture of the Buddha's body before going too much into the details of any particular part. Okay? When these are stable, meditate on the details. Varying the object of meditation precludes achieving serenity. So if you keep changing your object to meditation, it's impeding your gaining serenity. And similarly, if you're visualizing the Buddha, but then you keep changing what the Buddha looks like, sometimes he's round, sometimes he's skinny, sometimes he's sitting, sometimes he's standing, then all those kind of changes prevent developing stability on the object. Okay. Visualizing several times successively the head, the two arms, the torso, and the two legs. In the end, when you can get a general picture in your mind of the whole body at once and can distinguish the features roughly from head to toe with the limbs, although it may not be clear and include the light, make yourself content with that as you have found the object. Okay? So even the image of the Buddha you get is some kind of golden something blob somewhere that looks a little bit like the Tathagata. Start with that. Okay? Don't squeeze your mind trying to get all the details and make everything super clear at once. Then, wanting to make it clear, okay, so you've got the general thing, you focus on getting some stability on that. Then, wanting to make it clear, if you visualize it again and again, it may become clearer, but will hinder your concentration and your stability. Okay, so if you keep going over all the details again and again and again, and like, okay, where's his little finger? What how many folds in the robe does he have? You're going to drive yourself crazy, and that's going to make your mind very agitated, not increase the stability of your concentration. So, although it may not be very clear, if the object is unmistaken, you have some general form of the Buddha, you will achieve stability soon and attain clarity easily. At this stage, if the color, shape, size, or number of the object of meditation changes, do not accept it, but unerringly maintain the initial object. Okay, so if you're visualizing the Buddha and he's sitting down and all of a sudden he's standing up, you go back to a seated Buddha. Okay? This is of great importance. If, no matter what you do, it is difficult to get an image of the deity to appear, place your mind on any of the other objects mentioned earlier, like to counteract the different afflictions and so on, or on the view ascertaining emptiness and maintain it there, as the chief purpose is to achieve serenity. So if focusing on the body of the Buddha is not the object of meditation that really works for you, it's fine to choose another one. Okay? But since this one has many advantages, they recommend that. And you can really see, like, I was thinking, if you're in the hospital and you're going to go, they're going to put you under, if you can visualize the Buddha before they do, your mind is going to be so peaceful. Yeah, and then you wake up and there's the Buddha for you too. Yeah, and just, helping us to think about the Buddha again and again and remember the Buddha's qualities, and that really helps our refuge, helps us feel closer to the Buddha. So many benefits. Okay, now the flawless method for how to focus the mind on the object. Okay, the two traits of concentration to have are great mental clarity, so the clarity aspect with intensity, and the non-discursive stability aspect that abides one-pointedly on the object, whatever it may be. So that's what I said before. needs stability and clarity, and then helping the clarity to be intense. Some, adding bliss and limpidity, assert 4 traits. However, limpidity, or calmness, is achieved by clarity, and bliss is not necessary at this point. Yeah. Therefore, as explained above, it is certain that it has 2 traits, okay, stability and clarity. Laxity hinders the achievement of intense clarity, and restlessness thwarts one-pointed non-discursiveness or stability. Okay, so remember I was talking about this a little bit earlier, that when you have some clarity of the object, but it's not intense, it's because the mind has laxity in it. It's the concentration's too loose, so the clarity isn't very clean. It's not crisp. It's not vivid. And then, so laxity is the problem for having clarity. And what interferes with having stability is restlessness, or agitation, excitement, however you want to translate it. So that's the mind that's like, it's restlessness, and you want something interesting to think about it. We have it most of the day. At least some of us do. Okay. So having identified the contrary conditions, coarse and subtle laxity, and coarse and subtle restlessness, prize relying on the favorable conditions, mindfulness and introspective awareness. Okay, so the antidotes to both laxity and restlessness are mindfulness and introspective awareness. Okay, so it goes on to describe this more. Having pictured the previously ascertained object of meditation, so you've visualized the image of the Buddha, it is said that intense mindfulness ties the mind to the object and keeps the mind from being distracted by other objects. Thus, the traits of mindfulness in this context are 3, relative to its object, mode of apprehension, and function. Okay, so here, mindfulness has a very specific meaning. It's not what mindfulness means, out in, in your mindfulness app. Okay? Here, mindfulness is the mental factor that is essential for having stability, for being able to keep your mind on that object. Because mindfulness is a mental factor that remembers the object of meditation and focuses on it in such a way that it prevents the arising of other distracting things. Okay, so mindfulness is really when we sit down to meditate, the thing that we have to kind of remind ourselves of at the very beginning. I'm going to remember this object, keep my mind on it, so that it doesn't start going off to roaming the universe. Furthermore, as explained before, once you have found the object of meditation, the mind holds it, thinking the mind is tied to the object. I don't think you actually sit there and you're single-pointed or developing some focus on the Buddha and thinking, my mind is tied to the object. I don't think that's a conscious thought, but what's happening is when you have strong mindfulness, your mind is tied to the object. It's focused on the object. It isn't doing that. Okay? Once you have heightened the intense mode of apprehension without analyzing anything further, maintain the strength of that state of mind uninterruptedly. Okay, so once you have some stability on the image of the Buddha, you have some clarity, you've heightened the intensity of the clarity a little bit, then you stop analyzing. You stop going over all the details of the image, and you maintain the strength of that state of mind. You maintain your mindfulness uninterruptedly. Okay, so once you have some image of the Buddha and a little bit of clarity, you focus your mind on that. Okay, so this is the instruction on how to rely on mindfulness. So mindfulness is the thing that is really, it's important at the beginning and the middle at the end, but especially at the beginning. Okay, because without mindfulness, we aren't on the object, so what's happening? When cultivating concentration, meditation's main object is the cultivation of mindfulness. As for mindfulness, the aspect of its mode of apprehension is recollection. So mindfulness remembers the object, and recollection's mode of apprehension is tight. So when you remember something, your mind is on it. Although it says tight, don't think of tight like doing that. Yeah, it's not, whenever you hear tight focus, don't think of squeezing your mind. What it just means is that you keep your mind steady on that object. If your mind gets too tight, it actually causes restlessness, and you have to loosen the mode of apprehension a little bit. If your mode of apprehension is too loose, then the clarity, the intensity of the clarity decreases, and laxity comes in, and so you have to tighten it a little bit. Yeah, but I'm really emphasizing this because we hear the word tight and loose, and we're very reactive to those words. Tight, I'm concentrating. Loose. Yeah. So we're not talking about that, not talking about extremes here. Okay, otherwise, although clarity may be achieved, the clarity aspect will lack intensity. Those who believe in objectless meditation, too, must assert a distraction-free form of meditation. When they talk about objectless meditation, I'm wondering if they're talking about using emptiness as the object of serenity, because emptiness is often what's meant when you hear the term objectless. Like in Migme Tsewe, objectless compassion, yeah. Okay, the compassion sings, combined with seeing sentient beings as empty. Okay, so yeah, if you're doing objectless meditation, you must assert a distraction-free form of meditation, in which case the way of meditating with mindfulness, without distraction, and without losing the object of meditation does not differ. So no matter what your object of meditation is, you still have to meditate the same way.
In this visualization, where put a Buddha, in front of or over the head?
Usually, there's different ways to visualize the Buddha. Usually, when you're using the Buddha to develop serenity, you're using the Buddha in front. Okay?
And that's for the size and placement, like the distance? How to determine?
Yeah, they usually say maybe like a body's length in front of you, although when I do it, Buddha's much closer. Yeah. And then they say for the size of the object, some people might say like this big, but then they also say, if you can get it, if it's smaller, that's very good because it focuses the mind more.
So if that makes if that's uncomfortable, then it's okay to do it bigger.
Yeah, then you can make it bigger.
Someone online says, can you use Jai Sankappa as the object of meditation, as in Guru Yoga?
I would think so. Why not?
Are the casinas considered virtuous objects?
Yeah, that's what's interesting. The casinas, I wouldn't think, would be in particular virtuous object. The casinas are, the different elements and the different colors. And by themselves, those things are not virtuous. And yet, when we were going through a few times ago how you develop the super knowledges, then it's based on kasina meditation.
In that case, I'm not sure what makes the casinas supposedly virtuous and something like meditating on a flame unvirtuous.
Well, first of all, the flame is flickering, yeah, and flames go out.
But things like flames or like a brick wall, how is that different from an earth casina?
The earth casina is, something maybe about that big, and you use some clay and you form it and do that. If you want to visualize Trump's wall in front of you, yeah, his isn't even brick, it's steel, yeah, and he wants what, 1.5 billion or trillion something to build it. That's going to have a certain effect on your mind. Yeah. So, things have effects on the mind depending on what you visualize. Yeah. I found it interesting, Bhikkhu Bodhi said that not so many people meditate on the casinas nowadays.
According to his question, oh gosh. Is this maybe because it's coming from an instruction from a teacher, so because the mind can't distinct or doesn't separate it necessarily. I mean, at a point when you focus so strongly on the casino, but still your teacher is giving you this object. Versus if you have the wall of Trump, I mean...
Yeah. Yeah, clearly if your teacher gives you an object, you're going to have much more faith in using that object than you will if you just invent your own object.
And the other thing is, what's the difference when you have the Buddha as a whole object and versus just a part of the Buddha, just like his eyes?
Yeah, well, they say that if your attention, at the beginning is automatically drawn to one part of the body particularly, then that's fine to focus on that. That will help you get that part clear. But I think, having the whole body is, it's different than two eyes floating in space. Okay? Yeah? Uh-huh.
I think after we went through the 32 marks and the causes in Precious Garland, it makes your visualization very rich, or it just makes me more appreciative, like, wow, every part you need how much merit.
Yeah.
But I guess if you start getting into the causes, then that's analysis.
That's analysis. But, if you do that analysis in another meditation session, then when you visualize, it makes your visualization much richer, and it makes your mind more interested in the object too.
Serenity and insight, the difference, when switching object, serenity holding to one object, and insight switching objects. Then when they come and are united, and each one supports the other, serenity and insight support each other.
Wait.
So you were explaining that serenity focuses on only one object, while insight, analysis.
No, it isn't the object that differentiates serenity and insight. It's the mode of meditation that differentiates them, not the object.
No, I mean, like one remains with one object and one switches up. Did you say that? One.
If you're
analysis moves between different objects.
Oh, okay. First of all, I said if you're meditating to develop serenity, you don't want to be switching objects, yeah, which is why you're not. You have to be careful and not do a lot of analysis when you're trying to develop serenity, because when you're analyzing, like if you're analyzing about, emptiness, you're going to be looking at the aggregates and what's the relationship between the aggregates and the person. So there's a lot of objects there, yeah, and so that impedes just staying on one particular object, okay? In order to get insight, that analysis is you got to a point with your analysis where the analysis causes the pliancy instead of interfering with the pliancy. But that's a bit further on, okay? Is that what your question was about?
Yeah, and so then at that point, though, the analysis creates pliancy, but in terms of the objects that are being focused on, realized, or the aspect of the mind, is it still, moving between different because like you said, meditation and emptiness, right? This is like the whole point. Right? Mm-hmm. Meditation and emptiness, that's one object. So,
well, no. If you're doing analytical meditation on emptiness, you're analyzing the relationship between the aggregates and the person. Okay, so you're having different objects there, and you're studying the relationship between them. Once you come to some conclusion of that, and you get some feeling like, the person is not the aggregates, and the person is not separate from the aggregates, so there's no inherently existent person, then focusing just on that absence of an inherently existent person, then your mind is focused only on that emptiness, you stop analyzing.
And so if it was, for a mind that is a union of the two, or a mind where the analysis is creating pliancy, mm-hmm. then what's the object there? Is it looking at the
if what you would do in your session is you would probably start out with some analysis of the relationship between the aggregates and the person. And when you got some conclusion to that, and it becomes, your object changes into the emptiness of inherent existence of the person, then you're focusing on that emptiness. So and at that point, you're not analyzing anymore. It's the analysis has produced the pliancy, and now that pliancy, which is part of serenity, keeps you on that object.
So the union of serenity and insight is really like a span of minds. I mean, it's not like a moment that's like, but no. It's like how they work together.
Yeah, it's the two working together and combining. Okay, so that the analysis does not disturb the stability, but actually enhances it.
It seems like there would be a first moment of that union of calm abiding and special insight, though, because that's a demarcation of the path of preparation. So there would be some creation of that union.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. But it's not like one moment and then it stops.
No.
Yeah. I mean, to exist something, you have to have a moment of it. Maybe I didn't understand what you were asking. Oh, okay.
I haven't had one of the classes that are being offered around that were Vipassana, maybe in the Goenka tradition. Mm-hmm. But I never got the sense from talking to people that there was actual analysis going on during those courses. So I get confused when I hear Vipassana.
Yeah. Well, that's because there's many different ways to meditate on Vipassana. Okay? So that's why the term Vipassana, if you look in different Buddhist traditions, the meditation is done very differently. it comes to the same point, but the technique can be different. Okay? But I think I haven't done Goenka meditation, but from what I know about it, you're focusing on the body scan, and in doing that, you're analyzing what the body is made out of and what's going on with the body. But remember, analysis does not mean you're sitting there intellectually conceptualizing. Yeah, we hear the word analysis and we think, oh, now I'm focused on my liver, and my liver is this color, and, all this chatter going on in the mind. That's not what is meant by analysis here. Yeah. Analysis is a probing mind that's trying to understand. It's not an intellectual blah, blah mind. Okay. Yeah?
I went for one of Goenka's 10-day courses, and as that's the first 10 days, you're just a beginner student, and then we focused mostly on like this body scan of being aware of the body. But they don't really tell you what the returning older students are doing, and they might be doing something a lot more. I don't know what they're doing, but it could be.
I have no idea.
Quite different, and it might qualify more of what we think of as analytical meditation. I don't know.
But remember, analytical meditation, don't think that you're sitting there thinking blah, 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 blah. Okay? It means you're investigating, to gain understanding and knowledge and wisdom about something.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we were doing, was looking at the sensations of the body and scanning and just becoming aware of them in order to try and get some insight of their nature.
There's a lot in there to do that.
There's a lot.
I remember the translation that Thupten Jinpa told you. Was it analysis he uses probing awareness?
That was Susor Rigpa. What they often translate is sometimes individual discrimination or something like that, but it kind of means analysis. Yeah, this word analysis is very tricky because we hear analysis and our Western image is, putting something under the microscope and intellectually, is it this, is it that, what about here, and how does it combine with that, and this, and writing a dissertation on it. But that's not the meaning of analytical meditation. So this is going to be the last question.
Thank you. So, when we're trying to calm the chatterbox, the opinion factory, and if there's something that keeps kind of like, just returning again and again to the mind, even though it's, the reason for why it's ridiculous and kind of understanding the affliction that's present, why it's baseless, and that understanding is there, but it's kind of just like, just like a windstorm just keeps coming and coming without any control. What's the antidote in that case?
Then you need to stop your Serenity meditation and apply Lamrim antidotes to whatever that affliction is, and really meditate deeply with those antidotes. Not just, okay, I'm distracted by attachment, so yeah, the body's ugly, yeah, that's one. Okay, next thing, body's impermanent, yeah, done that, understand that. Then, the body's nature of dukkha, okay. But I still feel attachment. Yeah. If that's your meditation on opposing attachment, you're not meditating on applying the antidotes. You have to go deeply, really deeply into the antidotes and understand, like really focus on the nature of the body, really focus on impermanence, okay? So that you get some feeling for it. So it's not just, putting a quick meditation at the beginning to block something out. You really have to go into it deeply and develop an understanding and some wisdom regarding it. Okay. So we will continue next week with rejecting flawed methods. Okay. I had wanted to go through this review quickly, but it takes what it takes. I wanted just to add a little something to last night, and I hope you can clip this off and attach it to last night's teaching, because I think I finally understood the question that was coming up, and the thing about when you have the union of calm abiding and serenity and insight, yeah. So at that time you can do analysis within concentration. So then it's no longer either analysis or concentration. You can do both at the same time. And once in terms of realizing emptiness, you can do the analysis at the beginning of your session to, because by this time you're on the path of preparation, so you're high up there. You can do your analysis at the beginning to identify emptiness and get your object of meditation clear, and then you don't leave the union of serenity and insight. It's just because the analysis is not disturbing it, you just shift more to do more on the concentration side, because you don't need to do so much analysis because now you've identified your object of meditation. Okay? So you're in that union. Yeah. So I think that was kind of the question that came up last night, that some people thought you got the union and then you left it and you went and did stabilizing meditation again. And that's not the case. It's just all that continue. Okay? Then